When people are talking about the Sonic series, it's pretty common for them to say that the classic games are the best in the series. While overall I agree that Sonic 2 and 3 are some of the best games in the series, I think sometimes people forget that even some of the classic games weren't that great. Sonic 1, while being the first in the series, can be pretty rough at times, and Sonic CD has some really cool ideas that has a lot of trouble trying to make them work. So today my goal is to put these two side by side and see which one is truly the worst of the four original classic Sonic games. With Sonic levels, there is a very fine line between satisfying and torture. Sonic is made to build up momentum, so when you are forced to go slow for long periods of time, it's not very fun. So starting with Sonic 1, the game opens up on a great note. Now usually when talking about Sonic games, I get very annoyed by Green Hill shoving itself into places where it doesn't need to be, but in this game it was actually an original level, so I have to look at it a little differently. Green Hill is actually a really good stage in this game, and I'm not quite sure it's ever topped for the rest of the game, which doesn't bode well for the rest of the game. The zone has plenty of places where you can build up speed, go through loops, while still offering fun platforming. I genuinely think that the most fun way to revisit Sonic 1 is to boot up the game, play through Green Hill, and then call it a day, because right after this zone is where I think things really start to go downhill. Not long after getting into the second zone, you go under the ground into a bunch of tight corridors with slow-moving platforms that you have to wait for. From this point on, most of the levels are designed as if this game is made for a slow-moving character with little to no places to build momentum and actually go fast. The platforming becomes very slow and tedious, which just doesn't work well with Sonic since he is made to be in levels like Green Hill, where you are encouraged to go faster through the level. When Sonic is going slow, he doesn't feel that great to control, but that's only because he is meant to go faster. But this game just doesn't really allow that. And all of this stuff eventually culminates into Labyrinth Zone, where there are a bunch of tight corridors, spike traps, obstacles you can't see, and water. The water causes you to move even slower than before, while also being on a time limit before running out of breath. In future classic Sonic games, water is used in smaller sections or as a punishment for failing to take the better route. But in this game, it is used throughout the whole zone with barely any breaks, which makes it unbearable. But if you are able to stick it through to the end of Labyrinth Zone, you are actually rewarded with a pretty fun part of the game. Starlight Zone brings back what made Green Hill fun with plenty of ramps and hills, loops, and room to run around. It's like they all of a sudden remembered what Sonic's gimmick is. And to top it all off, the best boss in the game is in this zone. But this moment of triumph doesn't last long as we then head into Scrap Brain Zone. This is basically just annoying traps you can't see coming the level, and then once you think it can't get any worse, it does. Yeah, I don't know who hurt the developers of this game, but they are cruel. Sonic 1's design philosophy seemed to just be to lure you in with one really good level, and then torture you for the rest of the game. But now it's time to see how Sonic CD handles its levels, and it's safe to say that it definitely has an interesting approach. While Sonic 1 may have some more frustrating levels, it's impossible to say that they weren't pretty straightforward. There was a clear path you had to take, and that's all you really needed to know. But Sonic CD takes a pretty different approach to the level design. Instead of having one path forward, Sonic CD levels are more like a giant pile of spaghetti with a bunch of different things going on that all somehow intertwine. One nice thing about this level design method, though, is that it doesn't really leave room for the level to have any of those annoying sections where you're just walking through a tight tunnel. This game definitely allows you to go faster a lot more often than Sonic 1, but the problem is that it can be really hard to keep that momentum going. These levels are filled to the brim with springs, spikes, and enemies, and with how colorful the game is, it can be hard to see some of these things, or sometimes they are so close together that it is impossible to avoid them. The first few zones are definitely much less chaotic than the later ones, but the longer you play the game, the crazier the levels get. And then you get to zones like Wacky Workbench that are just annoying to navigate through. But what I have failed to mention is this game's main gimmick: time travel. In concept, this is one of the coolest things ever done in a Sonic game. On a dime, you can pass by one of these signs and travel through time to see the past and future versions of a level. But the problem with time travel in this game is that you are required to build up speed for a long period of time, which is hard to do when the level consists of 30,000 springs. Another problem with time travel is that once you put in the effort to find a sign and a place to build up speed, there isn't much to do. When traveling to the past, you can destroy the robot generators. This unlocks the good future version of that level, and if you destroy all of the generators in the game, you unlock the good ending. But if you don't want to put in all of that effort to painstakingly search the entire level for the generator, you can just go to the special stages and get the time stones. no time traveling required. But hey, let's say you want to travel to the future instead. Well, there is literally nothing to do there. You do get a different version of the future depending on whether or not you destroy the generator or not, but unless you just want to see the good or bad future, there isn't any special goal you have by going to the future. I find it sad that time traveling isn't very rewarding because they went through the effort of making 4 different versions of every single level, but I guess they just forgot to give you a reason to go to them. But looking at the time travel mechanic from a different perspective, it actually gives the game more replay value. You can go for the Time Stones one playthrough and just sort of skip all of the time travel stuff. And then later, when you replay the game, you can try and destroy all of the robot generators instead. I actually found that if I was willing to give the time travel a shot, it actually led me to learning these levels better and having even more fun with the game in future playthroughs. Treating these levels as treasure hunts is sort of a good way to look at it. Whether or not you enjoy these levels depends on whether or not you enjoy giving these levels more of your time. Between these two games, I'm pretty torn on who has the better levels. Both of them have pros as well as a long list of cons. Sonic 1 levels are pretty fun when they really let loose and just let Sonic do what Sonic does, and Sonic CD levels are more fun when they are less cluttered and filled with random junk. Problem is that most of the levels in these games don't do those things, but ultimately I think I'm just going to have to say that Sonic CD has the better levels. I found myself enjoying far more CD stages than I did Sonic 1 stages. If Sonic 1 had stuck with what made Green Hill and Starlight Zone so good, it would have won no question. But instead the game is just filled with slow and tedious platforming. Some of these bad qualities are still in some CD levels, but to a far lesser extent. But another important aspect of the levels is how they look, because it wouldn't be very fun to run through this, now would it? In Sonic 1 we have a lot of different places to go through, and none of them necessarily feel generic, but a lot of them aren't that memorable either. I enjoyed Starlight Zone as a stage, but I gotta say it looks really boring. It's just a bunch of floating puke green platforms. Marble Zone looks cool on the outside when you are running through the ruins that have been taken over by grass, but the moment you go inside, it's basically just purple. In my opinion, the two zones that look the most interesting are probably Green Hill, and I hate to admit it, Labyrinth Zone. Green Hill just has a pretty distinctive and memorable look to it. The checkered ground and striped grass give it a pretty distinct look, even if it is a little overused nowadays. Labyrinth Zone, while feeling miserable, actually looks pretty cool. It's basically some sort of a ruin that has been flooded with water. While the spike traps feel really annoying while playing, they do make the level feel like some sort of ancient temple from a movie, which is pretty cool in concept. Now, Sonic CD, on the other hand, has levels that basically just feel like colors. Except for Palm Tree Panic, none of these levels feel like real places. Like, Collision Chaos is basically this strange abstract world with a bunch of pinball elements scattered around the stage. We have Stardust Speedway, which I guess is supposed to be some sort of highway. Honestly, I'm not sure what it is, but the music sounds good. A lot of these levels just feel like an art piece more than a video game level or actual place, which is kind of cool in its own way, but can also make the game kind of confusing. Also, with the time travel gimmick, it is sort of confusing as to why these levels don't look like real places. Like, they want you to be curious what the future of this place looks like. I think the time travel idea would be much cooler if these were actual places, because it would make the past and future versions of them far more interesting. You can sort of see that idea with Palm Tree Panic, but not really with any of the others. Ultimately, I think that both of these games kind of tie in the theming department. Sonic 1 can feel sort of bland at times, but at least the levels feel like an actual place in the Sonic world. Sonic CD looks really interesting, but maybe just a little too interesting and not enough like actual places Sonic would go. While both of these games do feel pretty similar control-wise, there are still a few differences. Sonic 1 was the first game, so ideas like the spin dash hadn't been thought up yet, so all Sonic could really do is run, jump, and roll into a ball. Sonic CD came up with its own idea called the Super Peel Out. It basically does what the spin dash does, but leaves you vulnerable to enemies. It also looks really cool. But since this game came out after Sonic 2, they went ahead and added the spin dash as well, which kind of makes the peel out less useful. Also, the spin dash in this game just feels really weird and I don't like it. It's sort of an automatic improvement over Sonic 1 since it didn't really have a spin dash or anything to help you speed up faster. And future remakes of the game like Sonic Origins, they fixed a spin dash to be more like other games, as well as adding the drop dash, which made the super peel out even more useless. The spin dash and drop dash were also added to Sonic 1, and I've gotta say, the spin dash makes that game much more tolerable. But one thing that makes Sonic CD special in my opinion is its charm. This game may not be the best classic Sonic game, but it has so much memorable stuff about it, like the music, that awesome opening cutscene. It introduced Metal Sonic alongside giving him an awesome boss fight, and even though it is heavily flawed, I still really love the idea of time travel in this game. I genuinely think it is a concept that they should revisit in some game in the future. While it may get kind of annoying after a while, the first time you pass one of those signposts and get sent through time just feels so cool. Even though the game has a lot of problems, you can tell that so much effort and love went into it. While I'm sure a lot of work went into Sonic 1, it just does not have nearly as much personality as Sonic CD. While both games are pretty similar in quality in my opinion, I think Sonic CD just barely beats Sonic 1 as the better game. The levels can be frustrating and confusing, but yet I find myself coming back to Sonic CD fairly often despite these issues. Maybe it's my nostalgia from playing the Christian Whitehead version on mobile as a kid, but I just think this game has so much fun personality to it that always keeps me coming back. While Sonic 1 definitely has sections that I enjoy, overall I just don't find the game that fun to replay. I think making this video has made me appreciate Sonic CD more than I used to, and I kind of enjoy it despite its flaws. For this video, I emulated the original version of Sonic CD, but if it's your first time playing, I would probably recommend one of the modern ports. The Origins port isn't great, but it gets the job done, plus you get a good selection of characters you couldn't play as in the original. I would recommend the Christian Whitehead port, because it's probably the best version of the game, but that's been delisted on everything except mobile. Thank you, Sega.